All right, guys, so here's the third method that we're going to use to solve a quadratic. This is one that you can use when you can't factor your trinomial and there is an x term or a b term. Okay, remember when we're talking about ax squared plus bx plus c. Those are our a, b, c terms that we're talking about when we refer to those. I'll go ahead and let you know that this method is kind of tedious. It's kind of one that once you get it, it's good, but you kind of have to stay with it a little bit. It's kind of tricky at first. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, guys, let's look at a couple of these. Before I do these, completing the squares, I'm going to do a couple refresh things. If I look at this, just factoring it, what multiplies to 9, but it's going to add up to 6? Well, that's pretty easy. It's going to be positive 3 and positive 3. So if x plus 3, and then x plus 3. All right. Now, x plus 3, I have two of them, so I can actually write this as x plus 3 squared. And that's going to help us out when we do completing the square and realizing that that factored is just x plus 3 squared. Okay. Same thing over to this next one. 1 multiplies to 25 but adds up to negative 10. We'll just negative 5 and negative 5. So x minus 5 and x minus 5. Okay. Now, I can write that as x minus 5 squared. Okay. Now, if you notice about these, the c term for both of these were perfect squares. Okay. Now, if you've noticed, the b terms of these, if you take half of it, that's the number. Okay, half of 10 is 5, and 5 squared was 25. So there's kind of a pattern there. If you notice 6, half of 6 was 3. Half of 10 was negative 5. That's going to kind of help us out with that pattern. And that's going to really help us out when we complete the square. Okay, we're going to fill in the blanks to make these perfect square trinomials. So we're going to fill these blanks in to make these problems look like the ones that we just did. Okay, the kind of trick to doing that is we're going to take half of this b term and then square it. Okay, so half of 10 is 5, and then I'm going to square that, which would be 25. Okay. Same over here, half of negative 12 is negative 6. Square it is going to give me 36. Now, if I factor these, this would end up being x plus 5 squared, and this would be end up being x minus 6 squared. Okay. This step right here is going to be really helpful when we go to completing the square. Okay, this is kind of the basic or the building block. All right, guys, here's your steps. This is a great thing to look back at. If you're ever stuck, you can go back and look, okay, did I do this step yet? If you did, go to the next one. If not, try to figure out where you're at from there. Okay, the first thing that you need to do is make sure that if there's a GCF, though, you need to divide everything by that GCF. Also, the thing that's different about completing the square, if you're getting the x and the x squared, that a and the b term, on the same side, and then you get the number on the other side. That's a little bit different than the other two methods that we've been doing. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example. Okay, guys, here's our first example. Okay, I'm going to check for a GCF. There's not a GCF that goes into all those numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next step, which is get x and x squared by itself. So I'm going to have to subtract both sides by 5. Okay, so I'm going to be left with x squared minus 8x. And I'll leave a blank, and you'll see y in a little bit equals negative 12. Now, when I'm doing this problem, you're going to want to model it exactly how we model it on these videos, okay? So, for this, I'm actually going to do what I did a couple slides ago and try to complete the square. I'm going to make these perfect square trinomials. So, I'm going to put a plus blank here. If I add something to one side, though, I have to do it to the other side. So, I need to put a plus blank on both sides, okay? Now, I'm actually going to have to set this up. I want to make this into a perfect square trinomial, just like we did a couple slides ago. So what's half of negative 8? Well, that's going to be it. Negative 4. So take half of it, divided by 2. Okay, and once you get that, you're going to need to square it. So negative 4 squared is positive 16. It's always going to be a positive that goes into both of those blanks. If you add 16 to one side, you have to add it to the other side. Okay. So I have my left side of this equation in red. It's already done. Now let's do negative 12 plus 16, which is going to be a positive 4. Okay. Now, we have this new equation set up in red. Well, I can actually solve that now. How do I get rid of a squared? I can square root. When I have to do it to one side, I have to do it to the other side. So now I'm left with x minus 4 equals, now don't forget, anytime you square root both sides, it's going to be plus or minus. And the square root of 4 is just 2. So I can go ahead and put that in as just 2. So now what we have to do, be careful here. This is two equations. We actually have two equations here. We have x minus 4 equals a positive 2, and x minus 4 equals a negative 2. Now we're going to have to go ahead and solve for x. Always split them up like this. Don't try to add 4 because x isn't going to equal positive or plus or minus 6. Okay, so you have to split them up. So x is going to equal 6 over here once I add 4 to both sides, and then x is actually going to equal a positive 2 over here. So we have two answers right there, and that's how we complete the square. If you need to rewatch this, I would highly recommend it because this is a process that takes a little bit. You're not going to get it the first time. It's going to take a little bit of practice. Alright, for this example, first thing we got to do, check to see if there's a GCF there. There's not a number that goes in all of them, so what I need to do now is get x squared and x on the same side. So I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So I'll have x squared minus 10x, leave a little bit of space, equals 7 minus 4 is 3. And now I'm going to go ahead and complete the square. So we're going to make this a perfect square trinomial. So I'll put my plus blank and my plus blank. And I know I'm going to make a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to go ahead and set myself up with this little parenthesis and the squared there, equal sign. Now let's go ahead and do this process. We're going to do half of negative 10, which is negative 5. You're always going to match the sign. If it was a minus, it'll be a minus down there. Now we have to square it, though. Negative 5 squared is a positive 25. And if you add 25 to one side, you got to add 25 to the other side. Okay, so my left side done. Now let's go ahead and do 3 plus 25, which is 28. Okay. Now I need to get rid of that squared, so I will square root both sides. Right? So I'm going to have x minus 5 equals, remember, anytime you square both sides, you need a plus or minus there. Okay, now square root of 28, I don't know what that is, so let's break this down. 7 and 4, well, 4 is 2 and 2, so this is actually going to be 2 square root 7. Okay, now remember, you have two equations now, so let's separate this. I have x minus 5 equals positive 2 square root 7, and then I also have x minus 5 equals negative 2 square root 7. Now, let's go ahead and solve these. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides. Now, you can't combine the 2 and the 5 since it's a 2 square root 7. So all you're going to do is you're just going to rewrite it as x equals 5 plus that 2 square root 7. Because you can't combine those. They're not like terms. So that's it for that one. Okay. Now on the other side, we're going to go ahead and add 5 over here. Add 5 over here. And the same will apply. You can't combine it, that 2 and the 5, because the 2 has that square root 7. So you're just going to have a positive 5 minus 2 square root 7. And that's our answer right there. So you have two answers. You have x equals 5 plus 2 square root 7, and then x equals 5 minus 2 square root of 7. Alright, here we go. Now this one's a little bit different. I noticed there's a 2 that goes in all these. So I'm actually going to divide everything by 2. So I'm going to have x squared minus 8x minus 9 equals 0. Okay. Now this is a little different. It's not all to one side yet. So I need to get x squared minus 8x, add 9 to both sides, so that's going to equal a positive 9 now. Okay. Now let's go ahead and set up this perfect square trinomial. Now, I have half of negative 8 is negative 4. Square it, 16. if I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other side. So I'm going to have 25 over here. Okay, let's get rid of that square root, or square, by square rooting both sides. So I'll have x minus 4 equals a plus or minus 5, because square root of 25 is just 5. Okay, now split this up. I have x minus 4 equals positive 5, and x minus 4 equals negative 5. Okay. Now I add 4 to both sides, so x equals 9. There's one of my answers. And then add 4 to both sides over here, so x equals negative 1. There we go. That's it. That's all. Go ahead and try those practice problems. If you need to, go back and rewatch these videos. It's kind of a tough process. Just trust it. We're going to spend today and tomorrow on it. So just give it your best effort.